AdLib is the DSP-agnostic buying platform to scale your programmatic campaigns smarter, faster, and more profitably. AdLib helps independent agencies and marketers deliver premium programmatic performance without the complexity, cost, or overhead of traditional DSPs. Their platform provides the tools, data, and automation to run enterprise-quality campaigns, from CTV and audio to geofencing and YouTube, all under one roof with zero trafficking headaches. Plus, they're not just a platform, they're your growth partner. The AdLib team helps you win new business, expand budgets, and deliver measurable ROI that keeps clients coming back. It's time to unlock programmatic. Join leading marketers worldwide who are using AdLib to deliver more campaigns with better results. Check out getadlib.com. Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zappa. I'm joined by Franchi and Transmit's Scott Young. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great as well. I see you every week because you are a Sharp Pen client, disclosure, a Purium Portco. And I'm just realizing today, because we often talk about it when we have hirsute guests, that you have a wonderful head of hair.
Oh, why, thank you.
Yeah, we just like to keep track, like sometimes Eric's outnumbered. We have 2 balds and 1 hair. Today we have 2 hairs and 1 bald. So, it fluctuates.
Not only is Transmit an Aperium portfolio company, it is the first Aperium investment we ever made in 2018.
Wow. And it was one of your most successful, right? So it was basically all downhill from there.
It is the first. It is one of the most successful, and it continues to amaze because of the laws of compounding. Like, you just keep growing, at some point becomes like a very, very big business, which Transmit is.
Yeah, I mean, it's all due to Eric's brilliance in identifying early stage companies.
Thank you, Scott. Hey, for those, all right, we're going to talk about the state of streaming today. That's the goal of the pod, because Transmit is essential to all of it. But for those who are unfamiliar, tell us what Transmit does.
Transmit works with media rights holders and streaming operators to help them monetize better. And what I mean by that is our software integrates seamlessly across whether you're a distributor, whether you're a streaming operator, media rights holder, to create new incremental monetizable advertising space outside of the traditional ad pod break. And we do that in the form of identifying moments where we can create really impactful advertising, like dynamically creating a squeeze back ad, picture-in-picture video, graphics inside of the stream that can be addressable and personalized to each individual viewer, so people aren't seeing the same things while they're watching concurrently, and advertisers can gain greater value. And as a result, we've built this technology to do all of that in a programmatic way. We built a marketplace that does over 2 billion ad impressions on a monthly basis, connecting advertisers to more attentive advertising opportunity and creating greater value and yield for publishers on a per impression basis.
So, Scott, just to give the people an even more tangible picture, what would be an example of like a customer who would use Transmit and where your tech would come into play versus, say, the 30-second ad spot they're used to using to monetize their content?
So if you're looking at a regional sports network, such as, let's say, Gotham, you're watching a Yankees game, you'll come into a home run, and we will basically trigger an ad inventory opportunity. Then that could be decisioned on by a variety of advertisers and ad servers, and they can target their individual viewers watching that game at that time. Viewers will see a squeeze back, like an L bar or a picture-in-picture video ad that's personalized to them, and advertisers gain the opportunity to really capitalize on the moment, being able to speak to the viewer in a more personal way based off of what they're watching, celebrating a home run with a hometown fan, and offering them the ability to purchase their products and services in real time.
Yeah, so it's incremental inventory. It's revenue that the publisher wouldn't have gotten otherwise, which is especially critical given how expensive sports rights are. For example, the jewel of CTV. It is super high engagement. It is non-intrusive, so it protects the viewer experience. And you're using AI, right, to be able to detect those moments, because it is otherwise a very difficult technical problem to understand when exactly to insert that in-stream ad format.
Yeah, exactly. Training algorithms to understand the right opportunity. I mean, we've been training our algorithms to perfect the viewer experience for the last 10 years. We started doing this back when we met Eric 10 years ago. And we've gained a lot of learnings after delivering, now over 2 billion impressions on a monthly basis, understanding how viewers react, understanding how advertiser performance is affected, and being able to trigger and identify contextual moments within a particular stream while it's happening live.
Great use case of AI, right? Because inherently, unless you're one of these athletes or organized crime members that have made the news recently about like, taking a fall during a fight or striking out intentionally, you don't know when a home run is going to be hit, right? So, being able to train the AI to detect high engagement moments and then trigger an ad accordingly is like just a no-brainer use case. I love it.
So when I think about the media landscape, I think about the three important channels as being CTV, social, and then increasingly AI native interfaces, right? Historically, we would have said search. Now we're thinking more like LLMs, and obviously Google is also headed in that direction. Within CTV, the most valuable kind of property is live sports. And so that is where the foundation of the transmit business is as well. But the challenge, as I've learned from working with you guys, is that those sports rights are extremely valuable, right? Because they're unique content. Hundreds of millions of people care about them. They have to go to the rights owner to get that content. But because they're so valuable, they're also really expensive, right? So if you want to buy those rights, okay, it's a huge coup to get them, but then you have the problem of how do I monetize that? And that's where Transmit comes in. I thought we could talk about that through the lens of a recent news story, which was the YouTube TV Disney fight. Could you explain to the audience sort of what was happening there and what it says about the state of streaming?
Well, first of all, I think you always have to look at history when you think of what's happening or emerging in our present time. And while this is very streaming heavy, the partnership between or the rights negotiations between the rights holder and carriage agreements with cable companies has been an endless fight since cable was invented. It's been the most contentious relationship in media. And that's because of a few things. One, because to do those deals, you gain obviously historically dependable revenues on subscriptions where you just know you're getting a check every month and it doesn't really vary. And we're able to rely on that. But it's like doing a deal with the devil. That comes with restrictions and restrictions in where else you can distribute it or restrictions in how you can monetize that. So now when you look at present day, even as early as like in the last 10 years, I mean, there's been major blowups between like CBS and Comcast, where they were dark for 35 days in 2013, Fox and DirecTV. It's endless. So now we're here with the YouTube TV and Disney exchange. And it really just comes down to, because it's like, who has the leverage? They're fighting for share of that subscription revenue because they still wanted to make up that variance or that gap that they were losing in linear. And they also now have their own D2C streaming apps that are competitive, and they're fighting for share of viewership and attention. And I think now that's just the world we live in, where that's just constant, and that leverage is going to keep volleying back and forth. But I think the one thing that has been lost is the reason why there's been such a heavy dependability on subscriptions has really lessened the value or has made advertising an afterthought. And I think now in the future, advertising needs to come front and center to help fulfill that gap. And we need to be smarter about how we do that. And that's how you gain leverage as well in the scenario.
So when you look at ESPN and YouTube TV, Disney, which owns ESPN and YouTube TV, a major property that was getting kicked back and forth, or that was a football here, is Monday Night Football. And, obviously many fans were upset that they weren't able to access it through their usual channel if they're used to using YouTube TV to access that content. So you mentioned it really comes down to who has leverage. Who does have the leverage, or what kinds of leverage does each party have in that negotiation? And what does that say about like the role sports rights plays in CTV?
Yeah, I mean, sports rights gives them leverage, but the value that the MVPD needs to kick in is how they can contribute to that revenue monetization. If your business is based off of owning sports rights, you're just putting up huge numbers, and you have to figure out how to recoup the benefit of those numbers. And right now, the model doesn't work. Streaming's far surpassed the economic model at this point. There's not a perfect puzzle piece. So they need to get creative. So in theory, Disney ESPN has the leverage because they have massive media rights. And honestly, ESPN and Disney have done a great job of like building a brand around that and capitalizing on those media rights. So in this situation particularly, they have the leverage. They were able to hold out, and they were probably honestly able to gain more subscribers through this dark period where they were in this negotiation.
Yeah, so for Disney, YouTube TV was trying to get Disney to lower its rates. The reason for licensing the content, if my understanding is correct. The reason Disney has so much leverage is because they have the sports rights. And again, that is a unique property with hundreds of millions of fans, and fans cannot get it anywhere else except either Disney or another property to which Disney essentially lends the content. And so like another client of mine, Chartbeat CEO John Saroff, he always says that like the current rallying cry for publishers, for media companies should be to build a brand. In other words, like the big challenge from AI and social is that they can replicate a lot of kinds of content, and then consumers just go to them instead of going to the legacy media company. And you see YouTube, eating into the share that legacy media companies have of CTV attention. And so his whole point is like, if you're a legacy media company, the whole game for you is to build a brand, and that means to create unique content or buy unique content that consumers have to go to you for and cannot get anywhere else. That is the only moat you have vis-a-vis like social or LLMs. Do you agree with that kind of view of the ecosystem? And I would imagine sports rights is like one of the ultimate examples of that, right?
I completely agree with that view. I think that should be, in the kind of new media world, that should be what every media company or broadcaster or programmer is focused on, is building a brand that's unique to them. Sports rights is what's going to captivate the attention. But what do they do with that audience when they get there? They have to make themselves the home of something, have recognition within the minds of the consumer. So they're going to a destination for something, even beyond that live moment. You have to figure out what you do with your content beyond the live moment so you can capitalize on extended monetization. That's the most important thing. And that comes down to your distribution strategy, your monetization strategy, and your brand value strategy, because you're competing with your talent too.
Besides like next gen monetization strategies like Transmit, how do the rights holders like monetize? How do they close this gap?
I mean, it's the content that they're producing around their events to make them more impactful, engage audiences, and give them something they want. So their content strategy obviously is critical. And then it's their distribution strategy. I think something that gets lost a lot is just closing up walls too firmly, because then you're just reducing your available audience and the engagement you can capture. I think it's okay to give up some of your premium media rights to free ad-supported streaming channels to further promote your brand and create kind of like this cyclical momentum where viewers come in the door through maybe a free ad-supported channel because they're engaged, they're able to watch something for free. Obviously, that's an ad-support opportunity. And then you can capture them further down the funnel with subscriptions. But you need to have a smarter distribution strategy and an even smarter, content programming strategy these days as well.
One of the most baller examples of, I think, a big bet that we saw this year was UFC.
Yeah.
So UFC, and I'm a big UFC fan, like to date, you've needed to 100% go pay-per-view as a user. And it can cost you over $1,000 a year based on the number of events that they've had historically. They did a deal with Paramount Plus where the vast majority of the UFC promotions are going to be free to Paramount Plus users, which is basically like $10 a month. Yeah. So it went from over $1,000 a year to $100 a year. So to me, I would have loved to have been in the boardrooms of both UFC and Paramount to really understand, like, okay, fine, let's make this bet, let's do this. And this is a very profitable franchise, by the way. Like, what is our strategy from a sponsorship and advertising and a promotional perspective to not just close this gap, but make it even better? Because they have a once in a lifetime chance to do something different and actually grow the brand of UFC. UFC is a niche partly because it's so damn expensive. Exactly. Like now all of a sudden, like Paramount can grow, UFC can grow. I think it's so cool.
And it's also a challenging advertiser conundrum because also the UFC is really challenging content to monetize. There's not really massive time for long duration ad pod breaks, especially within the moments of the highest attention. During rounds, you're not really going to cut to, a long duration multi-advertiser pod break. So I think they really have an opportunity to decide how they want to monetize and decide how they can do it differently. Because I think they absolutely have to. You can't just rely on the legacy model and pay exorbitant amounts for rights fees and not be able to capitalize on that with some sort of new initiative. So you could also thoroughly engage advertisers. At the same time, it's also a challenging advertiser environment and content. So they have to do different and have to figure that out.
So another component of all of this is that a lot of media companies are at a crossroads where their cable business is declining and they know they need to embrace streaming, but they have an innovator's dilemma. So they don't want to cannibalize the existing business or take attention away from it. How do you talk to media companies that find themselves in that position? How do they balance the historical cable business and the future, which is streaming?
So we find ourselves squarely in the middle of that fight as well, because we work with all of the parties. So when we're working with a media brand, and that's usually where we start, because they're the ones with the most immediate need. How do I monetize my content? What do I do differently? One, we work with them to outline their distribution strategy. Not that we are creating their distribution strategy, but we look at their distribution strategy and how we can streamline and uniform the ad experience throughout, because we're going to them and saying, hey, we could generate 20% greater value for you above and beyond your existing advertising business. But that takes like uniform distribution. You want your ad products available everywhere your content's available to watch, whether that's behind your paywall. Now you can get more premium advertising experiences that are less disruptive to the viewer. So you don't have to rely on long duration pod breaks. You can gain more value there. Whether you're distributing across fast channels, across Samsung, Vizio, and LG, we want to be able to align the advertising experience uniformly across all of those verticals. And whether if your content lives behind an MVPD as well. You want the same ad experience throughout so you can capitalize on this immense reach and offer advertisers the greatest value and also have uniformity against your content. That's how you capture the most value, but it takes everything to come together, like distribution, content strategy, and monetization strategy. And then also, what are you doing with your most high value media rights when it's not live? Our software also contributes to that. How do we get moments out to more viewers so you can drive tune in and greater sponsor value back to where they're watching?
So we've been talking a lot about innovating on the approach to monetization and the approach to advertising for streamers. There is also a buy-side component to this equation, right? And so, for example, TV Scientific, Sharp and Klein Imperium Portco, Jason Fairchild's been on the pod a couple of times. They do what they call performance TV, which is making TV work for performance advertisers by improving targeting, measurement, and optimization. How does that play into what you guys do or how you see the future of TV? Like, how do this sort of sell and buy side innovations potentially come together?
I think you have to make it as flexible as possible and as scalable as possible. So, we're creating new ad innovation, but new ad innovation, the most important thing is it doesn't come at the expense of scale. So it should not be overly customized, because then that blocks out your road to actually being able to get it in the hands of the most advertisers, gain the most effectiveness, and targeting the most viewers. So you need to make the creative accessible and actionable. And that's how we built this. So aligning the supply with the general ways that a TV Scientific or another third party would want to enable that for advertisers, make it measurable the same way that they measure their ads across the board, provide the right amounts of information and data back so they can decision on those viewers and make the most informed decisions about who they want to reach with the ad creative. Our job is to offer the canvas to make the advertising most impactful, because you can engage with the viewer in a more personalized way when they're watching something that they're really attentive in. So our job is to get their attention and make that actionable based off of how advertisers want to reach their viewer and drive the best outcome from them. And we've seen that, if we are able to pull all that together and we're able to offer these types of advertising formats, then you gain much greater value than just your standard, TV spot, because you gain more attention. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, these are other components of the performance TV equation, right? There's the targeting and measurement aspects, but there's also the creative quality, the format, the timing. So you guys have a direct role to play, I would actually say, in the performance TV paradigm.
Yeah. I think what gets lost in performance TV is, we've done all this work as an industry for the last 20 years on creating better ways to target viewers and eliminate message waste. But what's been lost has been creative execution and context. And I think that's what we're really providing, because the general just media inventory lacks attention. So the hardest part is making sure someone sees your ad and it's the right person.
Do you have a team these days that works with brands and agencies, Scott? Like, what's the kind of state of your GTO?
Yeah, so our product is designed to service publishers, obviously, and create more available, high quality inventory. As a result, what really helps publishers is a built-in monetization engine. So they basically access demand from day one once they integrate. So yeah, we have a pretty large brand marketplace where we work directly with brands, agencies, and select resellers and allow them to monetize and package our inventory for their use. And we've seen a lot of success partnering with some of the major holding companies directly, where they represent our ad products to their portfolio of brands, and they can really take advantage of more impactful executions. And our publishers benefit from built-in monetization engine that advertisers are willing to pay more for.
Scott, we talked a little bit about the role AI plays in your solution, specifically with Moment AI, the technology that allows you to identify the ideal moment to serve the non-intrusive ad. How do you view the role that AI will play in CTV innovation generally in the next few years?
So I think if you look at it on the time horizon of, let's say, 1 year, and I was just telling Eric that it just never ceases to amaze me how fast AI is playing a role in our daily lives. I feel like 1 year in AI development is like 10 years in what we would have otherwise thought was our previous development world. But I think in 1 year, I think we're going to see such a major change in terms of like ad creative development. It's just eliminating barriers to entry. I mean, it costs, I don't know what the number is now, but one TV spot could run $500,000, right? Now that's just completely out of the equation. And not only can you create advertising messaging really fast using AI and video, but you can also this morph into a world where you're actually adapting your creative on the fly. I think our concept of dynamic creative is changing to more adaptive creative, because dynamic, the way we know it, means, all right, I have a lot of different versions of my creative, and I'm going to target a viewer based on what we know of them, serving them a more personalized experience. But this is an adaptive experience now. I'm going to actually learn from what value we're getting out of our ads, and it's going to adapt to how it improves and optimizes the creative that we're delivering to individual viewers. And I think that we're going to see that across advertising really quickly, and we already are in some degree. And then we're also going to see that in terms of content generation, creating channels that adapt to what viewers want to watch and completely customizing the media consumption experience using AI.
Say more about adaptive when it comes to ads. Like, what's an example in your mind of what that looks like versus dynamic?
Well, I think I'm kind of using like the term dynamic, I guess, is just what we used to use to describe like the old way of doing it. That's what I'm saying.
Scott's in Miami, Eric's in Manhattan, Joe's in Brooklyn. We should all get a different ad for the local dealer of Toyota.
I already have a dynamic for me is I already have a bunch of ads that were created and queued up for your profile. You're an 18 to 34-year-old male. You love.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you.
We're all 18 to 34-year-old males here.
Forevermore.
We know what you like, and we have a variety of creatives teed up once we know that information. Okay. Adaptive is, all right, I start out with a variety of different creative versions for different audience profiles, but once I see how you react to it, the creative is constantly changing when we hit the next guy. And it gets to a point where that creative is perfectly optimized to drive the best result, and no one has to lift a finger. The creative's changing itself.
Yeah, I've heard this distinction before, for example, from Stephen Liss and Michael Bishop at Open Ads, where they describe, DCO is like you have a set number of permutations of an ad you can serve, and then you just optimize it based on whoever's there. And generative creative is like using generative AI to produce the ad in real time. And so they say unique creative for every impression is the bar, right? Like that feels like something ad tech companies would have said 10 years ago, but that wasn't really possible. I think increasingly, as we all see, as we use generative AI in our daily lives, it's something that's actually imaginable that AI could be interpreting the context, user, whatever, and create a very, very specific ad to whatever page or video you're watching.
Yeah. And then down the line, that same concept be applied to programming, creating the media channels that people are watching and adapting that to what people like and what they're going to stay most engaged within.
So I had one final question, which is, we've talked a lot about CTV. Is there anything non-CTV publishers could learn from CTV other than obviously their like enviable position in the current content distribution landscape?
Non-CTV publishers just need to learn how to be a streaming video brand. The barriers to entry to becoming one is just continuing to break. Obviously, with everything we just said with AI, you could just constantly generating content, speaking to your audience and becoming a video brand. I think the enviable position that maybe a legacy like a magazine have is they actually still do have audience and people that come back and trust them as a brand. And I think that's what legacy media brands can also learn from, the publishing world.
I think it's kind of a contrarian take, Scott. Actually, I think it's kind of interesting. I think that a lot of people would say, because there are kind of stock answers you could give based on our previous conversation. Like I might say, for example, the build a brand narrative holds, whether you're, Condé Nast or you're a CTV publisher, right? And so like that is one thing, is create content you can't get anywhere else. Create engaging content, figure out what's engaging and double down on it. Again, that's, my client Chartbeat does that. But you're also saying like, look, video is the future. It's not really even the future. It's the present. It's been the future for years. You're just not going to win with like static text websites. And you have to just embrace video and the way people are consuming content to survive.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And I think that you leveraging the tools to do that cheaper, faster, and more engaging is right in front of us. So they should take advantage of that opportunity.
Say more about that. So I'm in One World Trade right now. Condé Nast has like half of the tower that I'm in. They probably have some streaming assets, some streaming channels. Yeah. I don't even know. But like, let's say you were talking to them and giving them, kind of the 1, 2, 3 playbook of how a publisher who probably has a brand, video assets, how they go from like 0 to 60 on building out a streaming presence.
Well, I think one is obviously, and some of them are obviously already doing this, but starts with your O&O, kind of like test your content there, start cultivating an archive of content and build channels. Honestly, I think that the OEM space has so much growth potential to showcase premium content and gain value for media brands, publishers, everything, that every one of these non-video publishers should think about how they can have a fast channel, how they can make that content engaging, and how they can better monetize that throughout.
You mean when you say OEMs, you mean I should strike deals with LG and Samsung,
100%.
Roku, who's effectively an OEM. Got it.
Yeah, they own the home screen in the living room. I think it's gotten to a place where obviously it's scaled and viewership is scaled, but there's more opportunity to do that more effectively. And I think that a lot of them are leaning into that with new ideas and new opportunities for just about any type of publisher. Don't have to be a legacy media company.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. Hey, can I ask you another random one? This weekend, our friend AdTech God, he just went on a spree of posting like stuff on X. I don't know, Joe, if you caught that. He just like sent like 10 posts in a matter of 10 minutes. One of them was a very bearish take on shoppable TV. He's like, I think it's DOA. If we think about kind of Joe's framework of the fastest growing media, kind of X, CTV, and LLMs, it is commerce, right? It is retail media, and a lot of people think the kind of infusion or combination of CTV and commerce manifests itself in like shoppable TV. Are you a bull or bear on shoppable TV? And do you have like some of those capabilities that might show to the contrary that there's some legs there?
Shoppable interactive television, where you actually use a remote control to make purchases on your television set, I'm bear. I think that that's not the right environment. I think it might be for certain things. I think it makes sense if you're like trying to promote a channel. Be like, oh, add this to my favorites. I want to watch this show. Okay, click favorites. But to check out and buy something while you're watching something with your remote control, I just don't think that that's the future. I think we already know what people are doing while they're watching TV. They're on their mobile device. There's a lot of innovation that needs to take place to get better at connecting the dots between what you're watching on screen and your mobile device. There's a lot of privacy issues needs to be sorted out. The OEMs are probably the best consortium to help figure that out and solve that. But the real e-com opportunity for CTV is on your mobile phone and how you synchronize that experience with your viewing experience in real time.
Yeah, the device is key. It's all about the second screen, as they say. Well, Scott, thank you very much for giving us a masterclass in the state of streaming.
Thank you, guys. It's been a good time.
Thanks, Scott. Right. See you next week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.